We've just now reached a point where a lot of trainers online are unlocking those remote trades and having some mixed reviews about what people are willing to trade.
Yeah, it's been absolutely crazy because there have been so many posts on Reddit and X talking about what people are calling like nightmare remote trades. So one of the first ones I saw, and since then there have been so many posts similar to this, but this trainer was showing how like the person that they were trading with had absolutely no shinies. There's a Blastoise, Tentacruel, and Unpheasant. That is it. Everything else you cannot trade because it's still time locked. You can't trade Pokemon that you recently caught. So those are the 3 Pokemon. The trainer requested a Blastoise. In return, the other trainer who had no shinies requested a shiny Rayquaza, a non-shiny Azelf, and a shiny Palkia with a background. So this user on Reddit basically said they deleted this person because they think this is an unfair trade and it's completely like laughable.
Okay, so I have a few thoughts on trades like this. We've been to in-person events, we see how trainers like to trade, and there are some stingy trainers out there. But sometimes if you don't know this trainer, it could be a child that doesn't have good stuff, or it could be someone who's just extremely stingy. So to me, it's interesting to see how many Pokemon has this trainer caught. And if they've caught like hundreds of thousands and they don't have a single shiny on there, nothing from Com Days, that's leading up to being stingy in my opinion.
I totally agree with that. I think the thing is though right now, we're probably seeing more prominent players who are in the community reaching Forever Friends, because if you're interacting daily right now to reach Forever Friends, you're not like a casual player or probably even a kid. So I think it is probably people who actually play this game and are higher level, maybe even a lot of level 80 trainers. So I think there are people who have things, and I don't know why they're not putting them in these remote tags and then requesting really good stuff rather than using something like Campfire to communicate with people like, hey, I don't have a lot because I don't want people to just take whatever they want. Let's talk about it on Campfire. But I don't think that's happening either.
Now, if I was in this situation, sometimes I'm willing to help out trainers. Like if I know trainers, they're in our community, not every trade has to be balanced and equal. It's actually fun sometimes giving somebody something really good. But if I'm in this situation, I don't know the trainer, they're coming off as stingy, and I'm not really willing to help, what I would do first is I would go through all of my shinies and legendaries, well, all of my remote trade stuff. I have 979 remote trade Pokemon. All of those are shiny. So I would go in, I would select all of those, I would tag as hold, I would remove those from remote trade, and I would match their trade energy with just putting some random things in there and then just request the trade. It's like, hey, maybe I'll get a Hundo Blastoise or something like this, but I'm not gonna give out something good. And that might signal to them like, hey, you removed all your good stuff, you canceled it, because I for sure would notice if someone did that to me.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like you don't have to go through this trade. There's a lot of ways to decline a trade throughout the entire process. So you don't have to feel like you're stuck in with this moment. But I think that's good about like matching energy, especially if it's with someone you don't know or if you haven't been able to reach out to them on Campfire. I think that's been an issue right now is like people are trying to communicate on Campfire and then other people like aren't communicating. I know not every country has Campfire, like in Vietnam, Campfire is not allowed, but I think more people have access to Campfire than don't. I think there's just a few cases. So it's interesting that people aren't even communicating on Campfire and are just letting these remote trades almost go wasted because it takes a lot of effort to get to this point. It's like, why get to this point and not offer anything decent?
So if you were in this situation and you did what I said of matching the energy and put that there, and if they didn't want to trade, what would you do? Would you remove the trainer like this trainer did?
Me? Yeah, I probably would. Maybe I'd give it a little bit more, just see if they just happen to add a couple extra shinies, but I probably would delete them. The thing is for me, most of the people I'm hitting Forever Friends with are all people I know. They all either have like good things or things that are gonna help me like with my collection. So I don't know if like we're gonna run across this anytime soon because we know the people we're trading with. And I think that helps. If you know who you're trading with, you know they're a good trainer, you know they have certain things, you're gonna have some good trades. But if you are trading with people that you're not in a community with, it might be like really difficult to line up any good trades.
And one of the reasons why I feel like I would match the energy is because if they're wanting something good, they probably don't have that good Pokemon and it's gonna be 40,000 dust. And someone like me, I like to max out Pokemon, double move. I don't ever have any Stardust. So it's like, oh, not only do you want something good, you want 40,000 of my dust.
You
Like I've
literally had like 100 dust or 1,000 dust like the other day.
Yeah, I got down to 875 dust.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Like so low.
And so it gets to like, you want me to spend 40,000 dust to give you this, in which I'm willing to do that for someone that I know, or maybe I just met and it's like their favorite Pokemon and they're just really excited about the trade. But if they do come across with that stingy feeling, yeah, no dust spent for me.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I feel like your most recent remote trades have all been 40,000 dust, and I don't think any of mine have been. And I think that's just kind of interesting. To me, 40,000 isn't like the most, but that does kind of add up if you're doing these remote trades every day, which like we're starting to get into that routine. So every day spending 40,000 is a lot. And I think that could be one thing that we're seeing is maybe it's people who don't have Stardust, and that's why they're not offering anything good because they don't have Stardust. But I still feel like you could offer at least like a calm day shiny, because that's not that much Stardust if you have that shiny already. So I just still don't understand why they don't put anything that's like a calm day shiny or like a very common shiny, because at least it's a shiny over nothing.
Okay, so back to them not putting something because they don't have dust. I don't believe that, because if they're requesting for something, they're going to have to spend that dust.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So if it's like, oh, they're going to spend the dust, they're getting something good, yet I'm getting, something that's not that good in return, they're spending the dust too, so they should put something up.
Now, there's some really extreme examples online where it's like no one has any shiny and they're requesting like really good shiny legendaries from you. But there are some examples online where people have shinies. Maybe it's not the exact shiny you want. So this example, they're requesting for a shiny Larvitar, and the other person is asking for shiny Palkia, shiny background Zamazenta, shiny Zacian. They're saying this is unfair. And I think this is a little bit of a problem because I don't really see this as unfair. It's still shiny. Tyranitar is a phenomenal Pokemon. And honestly, it's up there within like Palkia, Zamazenta, Zacian standards of how good Tyranitar is as a Pokemon. So it's not like they're asking for, I don't know, I feel like that's a very fair trade in my opinion, because we're going to hit a point where everyone's gonna have all the good stuff and everyone's gonna take all the good stuff. So we're gonna have to be okay with some like maybe more average things or just kind of more basic things. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is an unfair trade. I think it just kind of depends how you look at it if you're expecting legendaries in return. But I think you have to be okay to not always get a legendary in return if you give one away.
So since we've streamed and we have so many shiny legendaries, for me, it's fair. I'll give away a shiny legendary. I have lots. Like we went to all 3 Go Fest last year, so I have a lot of Zacian, I have a lot of Zamazenta that are all shiny that I just threw in there. And because the things that I need for my collection are going to be more rare, it's going to be harder for me to find those trainers that have those rare Pokemon that I want. So if someone, maybe their best is like a shiny Larvitar, I think giving that a shot is fair in my opinion. It really just depends on everything they put there. If that's the only shiny in their collection, then that's when you kind of read that as being stingy. But I am willing to help someone out and give some of those shinies away that I'm not going to keep, because I don't keep every shiny.
Okay, but you have like 900 some to trade though, so you still keep like a bunch.
I have so many that I'm willing to just help out. And typically what I do is I look to see if they have any Gigantamax, because the goal of mine is to get Hundo Gigantamax. So if they have some Gigantamax, then I'll roll the dice on those and try to get a Hundo.
Kind of like what you're saying, like we've gone to the Go Fest, like I have the Zacian Zamazentas, I have Palkias. I really don't need or want duplicates personally. Like I am working on certain regional shinies, certain rarer shinies, costume shinies, even like mega shinies. Like I like to power up lucky shinies. It's part of like what I do. So for me, rather than even asking for a Zamazenta, they're asking for that in return. I would rather get a lucky shiny of a Pokemon I don't have, or if they have like a regional. To me, that's better. So I think you have to look at it that way. Like just because they're requesting a legendary doesn't mean that you have to give it in return. Like I said, I think it really just depends though on your interaction. If you know this person, if you don't, I do think the person who posted the Larvitar example, this is their second example. One was a Wimpod. Now the Wimpod that they requested was a new Dex entry. And I definitely think remote trading is going to be great for like new Dex entries, and I think you should definitely be doing that. But in return, the person asked for shiny Kyogre, shiny Necrozma, shiny Tapu Lele. Again, I think this is kind of fine to do personally, but it seems like this user had 2 examples where they asked for non-shiny legendaries, and then their shiny legendaries were asked for in return, they could just decline it, take away those shiny legendaries and put something else of similar value if they feel that way. But I think I think this is an okay trade, in my opinion.
Going to GoFest, I've had a lot of experience about trades. There was one person with a sign that was looking for a shiny Buzzwole with a New York background. I had that Pokemon, which I've now traded to someone else. But since I had it, I was really curious what they're willing to give. And I said, hey, I have that shiny background New York. What do you have? Their response, no shiny. That's all they said. Straight face, no shiny.
I think like you and I were so shocked. And there's a little bit of like a language barrier, but not much, because when we were in Japan Go Fest, we were definitely targeted for like regionals. Like it was like, you are not from here. I want your regionals. I'm being for real. Like we were targeted a lot by people who wanted our regionals. So for this one, we were like, wait, no shiny. I think we asked a couple times to really confirm that this person did not want to trade you any shiny for your shiny background that was exclusive to New York Go Fest. This is not like, yeah, like I said, it's exclusive to New York Go Fest. There was no other way to get this Pokemon. And I think we turned that down. And I think that was our first one that we've ever turned down, I think, right?
Well, that was our first interaction with someone with a sign, and it really just gave us a bad feeling that like, oh wow, if someone is going to be that savage for trades, then I'm not willing to help that trainer out.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like going to the in-person events, you see like how some players are. So I'm really not surprised by global remote trading being this way at all. Like I'm really not. I had this anticipation that this is going to happen and people are going to be really upset and people are like, oh yeah, finally remote trading's in. I can get all these cool rare Pokemon. There's a limited and finite number of some of these really rare Pokemon like Armored Mewtwo, the clone Pokemon, even some Kashi Pikachus, like players are running out of those. So I'm not really surprised, especially after attending in-person events. But I will say attending in-person events, while we've had some of those really negative experiences, we've had good experiences where some people are looking for like some unknowns. And I got a really cool costume, shiny Krogunk. Someone wanted, what did I get for the Popstar Pikachu? I can't remember, but someone gave me their Popstar Pikachu. They needed two different things on two different accounts and I traded them both and I was like, I want that costume, Popstar Pikachu. And they gave it to me and that was cool. So you do get people who are willing to give you some really, really good stuff as well, just because they want to like complete those dex entries.
We have another really good story from this. We were with one of our friends and we were in Japan. Someone from China came up and wanted to see if we had shiny Rayquaza. And our friend was willing to trade and says, hey, I have one with the London background. And they just gave it away. I was like, wow, I didn't even know you had this.
I know, right? I was
to
like,
trade.
why isn't this offered to me?
And that trainer just freaked out. They were like,
so
whoa. And that was really fun to see, just like him just light up and get ready for the trade. And she was just so generous to give it away. So
that's the only one too. It's the last one she had, I think.
That's really fun to see, someone that's generous. You're helping out a trainer. They're so excited. It's a completely different experience
than like no shiny. That's the thing. If like they're excited, I think that's what makes it really fun. And that's the only thing I feel like I'm missing with these global trades is like that excitement. But we have this like Patreon community that we are talking to everyone. So we at least kind of get to like message everyone and be like, yay, we got it. And like I gave someone a shundo. I gave 2 people shundos recently. So at least messaging these people I know and knowing that they got shundos has been like really special, even though it's like not that face-to-face interaction, because getting a shundo from a lucky trade is like really fun. And it's always like a really big, cool like group moment at a good Go Fest event. But yeah, like the Rayquaza was so crazy because this person was like bottle cap immediately. They're like, I'm gonna bottle cap this when this comes out. Like they were so excited about this Rayquaza. And that same person that we know, they're a trainer from Denver, they gave you their last shiny Relicanth as well. They gave me the Aerodactyl with the satchel, like the shiny from an event. So they're willing to trade and we're willing to trade for some good stuff. I think, what did you get them? You gave them the Rockstar Pikachu shiny?
Shiny Rockstar.
Yeah, so like that's like a very fair trade. So I think it really just depends also the like where you are, what you're willing to give, the trainer levels of everyone, how excited people are. So I don't know. I think there's just like a lot. And I just think, like I said, I'm not surprised by the comments I'm seeing online, but I think we also have to realize like we have to be a little bit generous here, right? Like here's an example of like a personal trade that I recently did where maybe like the Wimpod legendary or like the shiny Larvitar legendary example might say this is a bad trade. I unlocked Forever Friends and remote trading with Mr. Switz, who's in our community. So Mr. Switz wrote me saying, hey, I like Trico. It's my favorite, Hoenn starter. Shiny Sceptile's like super sick. I'm like, it is. It's a really cool shiny. Now, shiny Trico wasn't in my remote trade tag because I only had one. If you know my collection, I do the shiny living family decks. So my rule is if I only have one, I don't typically trade it. I have made this exception twice now. This was one of them. And I will, unless it's like a mirror trade, so I typically won't, but Mr. Switz wanted it. I was like, you know what, this is worth it because what I was asking in return was a shiny Articuno, Galarian Articuno, because I had just gotten a shiny Galarian Zapdos from Stevo. Obviously with Stevo and Mr. Switz being twins, I needed to get, the Galarian birds, at least from both of them. Because also for me, I really want one shiny Galarian bird that's lucky to power up. I've mentioned that's a little bit of my strategy is powering up lucky shiny Pokemon and legendary. So I'm going to keep this, and it's more meaningful if it's someone from my community. And I already have someone else in our community who's going to be giving me the shiny Galarian Moltres. So getting the Galarian birds from someone in my community is so much more important than just getting like the shiny Galarian bird just from anyone. So that's why I really wanted it for Mr. Switz since they had it. So, on paper, someone might say shiny Trico for shiny Galarian Articuno might not be fair, but I think the trading gods agreed with that and ended up giving Mr. Switz a shundo. But you never know when you're really going to be rewarded for doing a trade like that. So again, I think that was totally worth it. I think a shundo of any Pokemon is incredible, especially a really cool shiny like that. So, but also knowing that Mr. Switz did that trade with me, that next trade that we do, like, right, this isn't like a one and done thing. Like you can keep doing these trades. Well, I might get something really good next time. Maybe I get a Galarian bird in that instance and he can get that back. Or he could ask for something else. We do go to these in-person events. Like I think he asked you for a Mudbray. So there are things that I can do in return if Mr. Switz would like to ask for those, or really anyone in our community as well. So it is a little bit of that give and take that sometimes you might ask for something really good and maybe the next trade they ask for something really good. So it is a little bit of that as well that you just kind of have to know how to navigate these. And I think us going to these in-person events, we've sort of seen how this works and how some of the trading kind of bargains are made that sometimes you might not get the most rare exclusive thing, but someone is willing to give that to you, or vice versa, that you're willing to give it to someone and make someone's day. But if they are asking kind of like unreasonably and not in a very grateful way, that's when you don't want to do that trade. But when you know they're going to keep it, power it up, it's like their favorite Pokemon, they're so excited, like it's totally worth it.
So another strategy is trading with people in a community, because maybe someone only has one thing that they want to keep, but if there's another trainer that has two of those that can replace that person's and then they can trade it off, you can kind of work together. So we've done that in the past, that maybe I've only had one, but Bernie has two. So I'll trade it off and then Bernie will just give me one back.
Exactly, yeah. Or just knowing like there are things like that. So especially if like you're trading between us, like at least one of us is like an extra one or even more than one, so we can kind of like help you out. Maybe you want to do the trade with Cream, but you'll actually get it from me or something like that, so it just kind of depends how that works. Another thing though to point out is that maybe some people don't have good Pokemon right now, but they've recently caught something good. And this is another example, like with the Wolverine, I really want their shiny Pharaoh Furfrou, but it was caught during the Kalos tour and it's not quite there. I think we had 9 days from when we hit Forever Friends. Well, we still can keep engaging and work on that next Forever Friends as long as we do that trade before the 90 days, which we will. That way I can get that Pokemon. Because part of the strategy is rather than doing the trade now and just being like, hey, do you mind holding that for me? Like, you don't want to lose a Pokemon that you really, really want and maybe they can't hold it or something happens, like things just kind of happen and it gets traded off. So rather than being like, oh, hey, can you hold this for me later? I'm willing to wait. And they're willing to wait. But again, we were able to communicate that and be like, hey, do you mind waiting? Because again, we could keep working on that friendship. That's more important than me doing the trade right away is getting that Pokemon. So that also could be the case for some of these bad trades is like maybe you just have to wait a few days for some of those good Pokemon to unlock. You don't have to do the trade that same very day. So there's some like other really good examples online of like some, maybe this is getting more into the unfair category of trades. Like someone's asking for a shiny Mime Jr. and a shiny Sigilyph. Now I have extra shiny Sigilyphs. I had a trade for my Mime Jr. And Mime Junior is extremely difficult to get that shiny. So that's really rare. Siglif is really rare because like I said, I have a few, but not like an unlimited amount to give away to people. So I think there's like two strategies to look at this. We could talk later about your strategy, Cream, with the hold tag, is holding some of those really good trades for those discussions rather than just like anyone asking for them. But the way I see some of these, like when it's really, really unfair, like Mime Junior is really good and this person doesn't have anything good in return, is if you are requesting something like Mime Junior, you should update your list to have something just as good, especially if you can't write on Campfire. So let's say I see someone has, let's say Mime Junior, for example. Well, I might put another baby or a shiny costume, something that matches that, like a regional, a shiny baby, a shiny costume baby, just kind of depends, to sort of match that trade, because you can update your list before you send that request. So that's kind of what I would do, I think, in this situation. But what I find interesting is like you have these situations in real life as well in some trades. Like I had an experience where someone had a sign of like what they wanted. They were asking for the shiny Pichu with the like sun hat, which I have, and I'm not really willing to trade that, but I could be willing if they had something else that I really, really wanted. So on the back of their postcard, on the back of like their sign, they had some of the things that they were willing to trade. But what I felt like was really unfair is I went around, because I had a bunch of people talking to them. I skipped the line in a way, I guess, went to the back just to see what they're willing to offer, because I don't want to just to show all my hands, right? Which could be like what some of these trainers are doing. You don't want to show all your hands. That trainer snapped around, turned around, and was like, "What do you have that you want to give me?" And I was like, "Nothing." And I walked away and we left. And it was so like, I was willing to give you Martha. Martha is a prized possession, right? I'm like, you're not getting Martha. It's like a Butterfree situation where you're like, no, I'm not giving you this, So it's just really interesting when it's like, if it is really rare, like I'm willing to trade some really rare one-off things that I have, but it has to be for something really, really, really good in return. And if that trader's not even willing to show what they have, it's kind of like, well, why would I want to do that trade with you? So I see where some of like the feelings are getting, that people are being really greedy and not wanting to give anything good away.
So I have a decent hold tag, and these are ones that I felt were worth offering for rare trades. And maybe I'm willing to give some of these away to help out some trainers, but I don't want to just give away all of them and throw them into my remote trade, because that instance that I run across someone that has something good, I need to make sure that I still have something good to give them. So it's a decent tag that I have, and it's not complete either. I have a lot of things that I would mirror trade, for example, if someone had it, but it is difficult if you don't have a way to just communicate with them and say, hey, I'm looking for this. I'm willing to mirror trade it, because maybe they have it, but they're interested in something else you have. So navigating these trades can be tricky.
It can be, and that's why I think like Campfire or being in a community is the best. Like I mentioned to Cream, like I know some people that went to Paris Go Fest. I'm like, I'd be willing to lucky shiny mirror trade my one and only Paris background shiny Zamazenta, but it has to be a mirror trade. I'm not giving that away unless it's a mirror trade. So, but you have to be able to communicate with these people. And I think this is where it's struggling, where like people like aren't using Campfires for some reason and not communicating, hey, I have this. Like people in our community know we have things on the side that we're not, like, again, we don't just show all of our cards, because people are going to ask for that. And again, some of these things are so rare that we have to be a little selective with how we hand these out, because we don't have duplicates of them. If we have duplicates, maybe we put one in the trade, but when we start getting down to only one of these certain Pokemon, that's when you kind of want to trade it for like a mirror trade or things like that.
What they could do to really help this is allow you to see the name of the Pokemon.
Yes.
Because then you can see, oh, if this is named, it's reserved for someone else. If I name it .mirror, then you can say, oh, I'm willing to mirror trade that. So it's interesting that you can't see what it's named.
I don't get that.
That was my strategy at first, and say, hey, I have this special Pikachu. I'm saving that for an event Pikachu that I didn't attend, so I have 4 event Pikachu. But mirror trade or Stevo, if I save something for Stevo, these to me are clear indicators to someone else. So we need the ability to see the name or nickname of the Pokemon.
Yeah, I think that's kind of weird that you can't. I don't really fully get that. I think that would help out like a ton, honestly. Now, a lot of this video, we've been talking about like these unfair trades, but a few other things I've seen online, just to point out, is people who are saying like their friends won't initiate the trade or they don't have any Pokemon even in their trade tag. And I don't know if people just don't know how to do that. So would you like to explain how to tag Pokemon for a remote trade, just in case you don't know how?
Sure. So with remote trades, there's a special tag called remote trade added to your tags. It's only for remote trade. It even has this little symbol on it. You go to your Pokemon in your inventory, click on the Pokemon, go to the hamburger menu, go to tag, and then you select that remote trade tag. And now that it's selected, it's going to be viewable to other trainers that can view your remote trades.
Yeah, it's really easy. So if you haven't done that, do that. But I don't know why, if you do know how to, why you wouldn't hold that off. So that's just kind of an interesting one to me. I don't know what's going on with that, but that's how you remote trade.
Let us know in the comments if you have some crazy stories about remote trades, maybe someone who had nothing, or if you had some really good remote trades.
Yeah, I definitely want to know if anyone's had like shundos. Like I said, I've given away 2 shundos. Another one is someone we met in Madrid. They got a shundo or a choreo. It was their first remote trade too. And I was like, that was so cool. Like, I love giving away shundos. I think that's really fun.
Or if you were finally able to get that Pokemon you've always wanted. We'll see you in the next video.